comers, and you can share your experience with us when I when I finish. But it's the title of it is Weight Loss, a $1 billion business. You think about, you turn on any kind of social media, you pick up a magazine, you pick up a newspaper, there's ads everywhere we look for ways to lose weight. And I'll tell you, they work. Majority of them will work to lose the weight. And I tried everything, and I lost 100, 120, 140 pounds. I did that 5 different times. And 4 of those times I gained it back. And so it's really not about, I say it's not about the weight and the food. It is. That is a physical problem. But the statistics of people keeping the weight off is very low. There's people can lose the weight, and what usually happens is that they'll regain it and then plus more, So that's why I wanted to talk today. I guess maybe, I don't know if I'm doing this for myself or what, but I just searched everywhere in the early days for help. It wasn't that I wasn't looking for help. I went to psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, ministers, dietitians, and they wasn't withholding information. They didn't have the information to give me. Not one doctor, not anyone said, you have a disease. You have a disease that works much like an addiction, because it is an addiction, and it's a twofold illness. It has a very much a physical component, and that's what we're seeing ads about, is the physical component. That's what's grabbing people's attention. How to lose 10 pounds in 10 days, or how to lose blah, 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 and this, that's what grabs people's attention, particularly after the holidays, because, sometimes, and then people coming out of the pandemic, that have been home a lot, people gain weight, and a lot of people have. Some have, and so they're eager to find a quick fix. Now, for those, there are people who can gain a little weight. That's what we call normal eaters. They're pretty much normies. And they will gain a little weight, and then they feel uncomfortable, and they'll lose it. They'll just cut back, cut out. If they were eating sweets, they'll cut them out. It's not rocket science. My sister was like that. And I mentioned this the other day when I was talking with clients. My sister was thin. She was white, very white complected, blue-eyed, blonde hair, and that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. And, I had me some unrealistic expectations there. But I would watch her as a young kid, a young teenager. If she got any weight on her, maybe in the winter, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 pounds, I'd watch her broil her a piece of meat and eat broccoli or a cauliflower, and that's way back in the 50s. So people who are naturally thin stay thin. They just, and if they gain a few pounds, they get it right off. Now, for those who have, either a weight problem or and I will tell you, when I say a weight problem, compulsive overeating has never shown up in the diagnostic tool that we have to diagnose addictions or any mental disorder. But it finally has under binge eating. Now, binge eating is really compulsive overeating. But compulsive overeating looks different for different people. But binge eating, if you really want the definition of it, is, eating more calories than you need in a short period of time. You do that 2 or 3 times a week over a 6 months period, and you can be medically diagnosed as a binge eater. But compulsive overeating can look like binge eating. It can look like grazing. It can look like, grazing is where you just eat all during the day. Just pick up food all during the day. And then if anyone asks you about, have you eaten? Well, no, I haven't eaten hardly anything, because when you're not paying attention to what you're eating, you're grazing, and you have no idea how many, calories you're taking in and all that. So anyway, I just really wanted to talk about how, with weight loss in particular, it is a $1 billion business, and people, like I said, if we don't stand for something, we'll fall for anything. And so what I really want to talk about, again, like I said, maybe I'm doing this for myself, is to reinforce to all of us that have an eating disorder that it is a twofold disease. It has that physical component, but it's also, most diseases are single-fold. Like you have cancer, you have cancer. If you have heart trouble, you have heart trouble. Now with any disease, you're going to have some emotional upsets, but it's not it is a physical disease. With eating disorders, any addiction, it's a twofold disease. There is very much that physical component, and that's what's making, people make billions of dollars off of overweight people. They make billions of dollars off of us. Because we fall for it. We'll fall for anything. I say, I've done it. I did everything in the world that anybody might mention to, in order to lose the weight. And so that's the physical component. And as big as that is, it's really, I hate to say it, it's a small part of the disease, as big as it is. The main part is the second part. It is a mental and emotional disease. Now, if we don't address the mental and the emotional side of any addiction, I don't care what it is, any addiction, we may lose the weight, or we may quit drinking, we may quit using drugs, we may quit, acting out sexually, all of that. If we don't treat that core pain and that mental and emotional side of the disease, we will trade off to another addiction. I've seen it over and over and over again. I worked with some beloved people at the Serenity House, good people that had long-term solid recovery from drugs and alcohol. And every one of them, including Carmen that Shelley was talking about last night, every one of them, I'm 20, at least 20 years older than any of them, some of them 30, 40 years older, and every one of them are dead today. They are dead. Now a few of them did relapse with drugs and alcohol, but by and large, most of them died sober and clean from drugs and alcohol. But guess what? They died of addiction. They died of, majority of nicotine addiction, or they would, trade the alcohol and the drugs for the overeating. And we buried one about 7 or 8 months ago, had severe diabetes. And his doctor kept telling him, diabetes is a very easy, it's a simple, not easy, it's a simple disease to treat. It's not easy, and it is about diet and exercise, and that's, and so, but anyway, we lose good, wonderful, recovering addicts, drug addicts, and alcoholics every day to addiction through a different form of addiction. So I'm going to get off my soapbox, and the reason we do treat all addictions here is I want people, when they come into inpatient treatment, I want them one time in their life, it may be the only time since childhood, that their bodies have been free of some form of addiction, some mind-altering chemical. And that's what we do here. We attempt to get people clean of everything. In our meal plan, it is not the end-all, be-all meal plan. It's like not the Shades meal plan. It is a healthy meal plan. I call it a detoxifying food plan. We take people off of sugar. We take people off of gluten, we take people off of any form of food that can have an addictive ingredient in it. And what those ingredients are high carbs. Now we believe it. I mean, we feed our people good carbs. But anyway, it is about learning to feed ourselves appropriately. And I'm sitting here with the research that was done in 2013 by a doctor that has treated obesity for years and was thinking about going into the bariatric surgery field. And I've spoken at a conference, bariatric surgeons in Nashville quite a few years ago. And there was a big crowd of people there. And, they were all there because they were getting information about the bariatric surgery. It's all about losing the weight. It's all about losing the weight. And I tried to talk about the twofold part of the disease, the mental and emotional side. And when people are all hyped up about losing the weight, they don't want to hear about anybody's core pain or about the about the mental and emotional side. All they want to do is lose the weight and feel better. Now, what happens when people lose the weight, and we see it over and over and over, we have them coming into shades all the time that have had the bariatric surgery. And what majority of them, about 2/3 of the people eat through it, and about that number will gain at least the weight back that they've lost. Some will gain, more of it back. Because they have not treated the disease part. They haven't treated the mental and emotional side of it. And so this man, in doing his research, and I don't know, I'm kind of making it up that he might have done part of it. I do need to call him and talk with him if he's still alive. But anyway, he followed the research on the sugar research, and after we did the OWN network show, Addicted to Food, then we were invited to do a film 6-day, or an intensive, which we agreed to, and they brought in the clients and blah, blah, blah. We did film an intensive, and before they brought it out on the show, on CBS, I think it was, Nightline, I got a call from the producers, and they wanted me to go up to Eugene, Oregon to participate in this research that they were doing on all addictions, on all drugs. So I went up there really not knowing what they were going to do. And what they were doing, they were doing research on every drug imaginable: meth, prescription drugs, heroin, street drugs, cocaine, you name it. Every drug, nicotine, everything was included in that. And they brought me in to do testing on my brain about sugar, because I had thought about being a sugar addict. I didn't really know what they were going to do, but anyway, to speed this up, because some of you have already heard this many times, by and large what they did was they did an MRI on my brain. And they put 2 tubes in the unit, where they slide you in there. And when I got in, the scientist was telling me that there'd be those 2 tubes, and one of them would drip out ice water. They'd show me a frosted glass of ice water, and drip ice water in my mouth, run the machine. And then they'd show me a frosted glass of chocolate milkshake, and drop 2 or 3 drops in my mouth and run the machine. That took about 80 hours. Not 80 hours, 80 minutes. It felt like 80 hours, 80 minutes. But it was water, milkshake, water, milkshake, water, milkshake. When I had that, I probably hadn't had sugar for over 20 years. And by the time I got out of there, I was sucking on that tube of that chocolate milkshake like it was a calf after his mother's nipple, and I was trying to get more of that chocolate milkshake out of that tube because it had sugar in it, like that, it kicked in. So, and when I came out of there, I was definitely ill, which I was glad of. I was sick at my stomach. I had a headache. I mean, they had to take me back to the hotel, and I had to rest there before they could even put me back on the plane. And when they brought the film out, of course, they wouldn't give me the results of the test because they wanted to wait till they brought the show out. And so when they brought it out, the scientist was there with the journalist. And what the scientist did, she showed a picture of a normal brain, and there was a little activity in there, and then she showed a picture of my brain. And the journalist said, "Oh my goodness, it looks like a Roman candle has gone off in Tennie's brain." Now, of all of the brains that they had tested on cocaine, heroin, all of these different drugs, the scientist said that my brain lit up more than any of them. And that's on sugar, folks. So if it will do that for me, it might do that for other people, Now, I hate to have the, reputation as having one of the most addicted brains in the world, but I really already knew that. I can do something twice. If it feels good, I can get addicted to it, because not so much anymore, but, I can get addicted to feeling good, and that's what addiction's all about. But anyway, I just really wanted to bring home one more time that eating disorders, compulsive overeating, these are diseases. They're not moral issues. It's not a sin. And, I've worked with many anorexics and many bulimics, and I've never worked with an anorexic yet or a bulimic yet that didn't start their eating disorder with either being somewhat overweight, maybe a lot overweight. It started with compulsive overeating, or it could have been 5 pounds overweight, or thinking they were overweight. It all starts with thinking about the weight, whether it's anorexia, bulimia, or compulsive overeating. So that's why we teach people here that if you don't treat those underlying causes and conditions, that core pain, and continue to do that, what you will do, and we've seen it happen. We've had compulsive overeaters come in and lose 100, 150 pounds, and we've had a few of them get over toward the anorexic side. They would come back maybe for an intensive. They would catch themselves, and that's the side that is hard to catch because it feels good, folks, to get over there on that anorexic side. None of us who have eating disorders or any addiction, we're not a bunch of idiots. If we didn't get something, a feel good out of it, we wouldn't keep doing it. So, my hat's off to those folks that were getting in trouble with the not eating to come back and, either go through an intensive or come back for inpatient treatment because something had been missed, in that core pain. There was another level that they needed to look at. And so, your bulimics, that is about binging. It's binging big time. And then, a bulimic, and I can talk about it. I'm not talking about them, I'm talking about us. I'm a recovered bulimic, which, believe me, almost killed me. But it's about, I had lost that weight that 5th time, and I thought, I cannot gain it back again. There's so much shame in losing a lot of weight and then gaining it back. And people don't want to look at you in the eye. They'll look over you, around you, or they'll say very little, but most people don't. Now, kids will. Well, you sure are fat again or something, but most people won't acknowledge the weight gain. They'll just be embarrassed for you, But now when we lose the weight, everybody will compliment us and tell us how good we look, and we feed off of that. And when you get within a normal weight range, guess what? The compliments stop. You become like a normie. And addicts, we don't like to feel really like a normal. We like to be special and unique and different. So when we quit getting all those compliments, it's like, oh, well, is this all there is to it, to losing the weight? And I keep talking, if we don't treat that mental and emotional side, we'll either get back into binging and purging, or restricting, or compulsive overeating. This is a disease, folks, and I'm sitting here feeling like I'm talking to the choir because I've got some long-term recovering people on here that you could share as much or more than I am, because you've been in the trenches with your own food problems. And I've had people come in that have been morbidly obese, and they deny that they have an eating disorder. All they want to do is lose the weight. They deny that it is that big a problem. Maybe they come in because their family pushes them here, or because they want to lose weight. That's why they come in. And we don't teach that here. What we teach is that it is a physical problem, and we put people on a very good meal plan that they could live on the rest of their natural life. There's over 240 foods, wonderful foods to choose from. You do not have to eat boring food. I'm not going to eat boring food. I'm not going to eat, food that doesn't look good, taste good, all that. I'm not. We don't have to, And when I was overeating and in my disease, I didn't eat good food. I'd eat junk. I would eat trash, anything. I'd put a birthday cake in the trash, thinking that I was committed to not eating it. I very carefully put it in the trash, and then many times I'd take it out and brush the coffee grounds off of it and eat it. If you want to make a commitment to something, put that birthday cake or Christmas cake down the garbage disposal. But anyway, I could not practice my addiction when I was in it. I couldn't stop on my own. And I don't believe I could do it today on my own. I do not believe I can do it today on my own. We believe that it is a physical problem, that it is a mental and emotional problem. And I believe both of those sides needs to be treated, and that's what we do here. The food takes its proper place within a week, even with anorexics. It's amazing. Within a week or 10 days, most of the time, the food takes its proper place. Then we get down to those causes and conditions and work on that core pain, that mental and emotional side. But I believe that it is a spiritual problem. That's the part that is missing. That's the missing piece. And I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about what denomination of church you go to, whether you go to church or don't go to church, any of that. I'm talking about a spiritual solution. I believe that there is a God, and He's called many things, but most of us choose to call the God of our understanding God. And I believe it has to be a spiritual change, or it has been for me. And I've seen people that have really gotten in good recovery, that have done it. Say, I couldn't do it by myself. And the 12-step program teaches us by ourselves, we're going to stay in the disease. Because if you want to know what your problem is, you go look in the mirror and say, good morning, problem. We are our own problem. Now, when you're in the losing weight stage and you're feeling good and you're doing that meal plan, you get to thinking, oh, I can do it. You are setting yourselves up, I think. The program of a 12-step program works like this. It works God, ourselves, and at least one other human being. At least one other human being that has the same disease that we have. There was no way in the world at 287 pounds that I could talk to a normal eater about how much I was eating. It didn't make sense to them, and I never tried, I didn't. But when I got to my first Overeaters Anonymous meeting, now, I got there in 1972. And I stayed in relapse until 1985. But I kept going to the meetings, but I couldn't get honest with what I was doing about the food. I could not get honest about it. So, we must get honest with at least one other person. And what sponsorship is, that is for free and for fun. You do not pay a sponsor to listen to you. What you're doing when you have a sponsor and you call that sponsor and you say, I want to eat everything in this house, or I want to go to the fast food restaurant, I want to go do this, I want to go do that, that sponsor's going to listen to you. And what she or he will say is, I understand. And he or she will tell you a similar story that they have lived through. They're not going to tell you you can't go eat certain things, but they're going to tell you what happened to them. You know, what their life was like before recovery. What happened to them to get them into recovery and how they are today. And if people miss a 12-step program, I don't know if people will recover or not. That's none of my business. I don't know. But I do know that thousands of millions of people have recovered through the 12-step program. Now, I believe in therapy. I mean, I'm so on my soapbox this morning. I'm going to get off of it in just a minute. But I am so believe in therapy. Going to treatment, like I said, I spent 13 years sitting in OA meetings, and I don't regret one of those hours. But I had a disease that I was not facing myself, and that I had so much shame about that I would not talk about in those meetings. And I got sick enough, by the grace of God, God sent an angel to me, and he literally, I believe it was God working through him, told me about a treatment center in LA. And 1,500 miles from where I live, and I'd never been in an airplane, and there was no way in the world I could have done that. I was a big shot running a treatment center. I thought I was program director of treatment, alcohol drug treatment center. How could I go off and leave my client to go to treatment myself? And guess what? I started doing the footwork. I just started making calls. I didn't know how to get an airline ticket, but I made some calls. And that treatment center opened on the following Tuesday. And I wasn't there on Tuesday, but I was there the next day on Wednesday. There was only 2 of us there, only 2. And by the time I came home from treatment, there was probably 5 or 6 there. I'm the only one that went through that program while I was there that's still in recovery. Most of them have died. They've died of eating disorders. Now, it's not that I'm anything that special. What made the difference for me is I heard what I needed to hear. I heard what I was telling the drug addicts and alcoholics every day, that you have a disease. It's a physical disease, but it's mental and emotional, and you must treat both sides. And what they taught me out there is that I have a disease much like an alcoholic. And I had never heard that I had a disease. I was so relieved because I just thought I was a glutton, that I was weak-willed. And so I took that information and that treatment that I got, and Judy Hollis wanted me to stay 6 months. I would not do that. It would have been the best gift I could have given myself because I had been in the disease for so long. But I left that treatment center, and she wouldn't even do a closing for me. She threatened not to sign my discharge papers because she said, "You're not going to make it. You're not going to make it." And excuse my language, but the first year I recovered just to show that bitch that I could, because she said, "You will not recover." And I worked hard, and Judy and I are good friends today. And she said she knew with my anger that if she could make me angry, I could probably take that and use it to my best advantage. And she, said that I desperately needed 6 months, but I came home and I drove myself to meetings in Fort Worth every Saturday morning. Anyway, I won't go into all of that, but I got willing to recover, and I had to get with people with like kind that had the same disease that I have, because no one else understands. If you go home and you think your husband or your mother or your neighbor or your best friend or somebody's going to help you treat your eating disorder, you got another thing coming. They have no idea what you're going through unless they have the same disease. And so I'm going to end this, soapbox with you know, in reading this research paper that was out in 2013, and it's even worse today. It is worse today. And he talks about how food and sugar is much like nicotine, drugs, alcohol. That is a brain chemistry. It's biological. We didn't dream this up. And then your process addictions like love and sex addiction, work addiction, gambling, affects the same pleasure part of the brain that substance abuse does. And food comes under the heading of substance abuse. This is a man that never had an eating disorder, but he was going into the bariatric surgery field, but he did his research and he decided not to go into the field because, and that man had a lot of integrity, because he knew if he cut into a person's intestines and gave them a way to lose weight, if they didn't treat it as an addiction, that they would not recover, that they would not recover. So my hat is off to this man, and one of the researches that he also did was about the types of food that the food industry is putting out, and they make big bucks off of us. You know, this is why we teach people to go to the grocery store and don't go down those middle aisles. Stay out of those middle aisles, because that's where all the processed food is. And when you buy anything in those packages, you don't even know what you're buying. And what the food industry has, I mean, they've done all kinds of research to put certain ingredients in packaged food that will be addictive. And when you eat certain packaged food, bingo, you want more of it, you want more of it. The food industry, they are no dummies. Now that's why we are the fattest nation in the United States. Because, you know, if we don't stand for something, we'll fall for anything. And we fall for those people's advertising because we think they have done the research and that they know better than we do. And they have done their research, but what they've researched is ways to get us addicted to their product. So what I'm saying is, if you have an eating disorder, there's wonderful foods, and I'm going to repeat it, 240 different types of food. Feed yourself well, feed yourself with attractive food, feed yourself with food that tastes good and looks good, and when that meal is over, it's done, it's complete, and you get up. In the next 4 hours, you live your life instead of having, your life around food. Put food in its proper order. Eat the 3 meals. We're big on teaching people to eat 3 meals a day, and I know about mindful eating, and people say, just eat when you're hungry and blah, blah, blah. If that works for you, go for it. It never worked for me because I did not know what hunger was, because I never allowed myself to get hungry. I didn't know how it felt to be hungry. So we feed our clients, and I do this, except I eat much earlier. But, we feed our clients around 8:30, and they have a healthy breakfast of everything they need that is prescribed by a dietitian. And then they do not eat again unless there's some physical problem that they have that they might need a snack. They have low blood sugars, that's between them and the dietitian. But by and large, they don't eat for 4 hours. And then they eat at noon. And they eat, nutritious, attractive food. And they, what I hear from them, they get all they want when they eat at noon. And then they eat again around 5 or 5:30. And then a snack at night around 8:30 or 9. Now, in between those times, what we teach is go live your life. And if you'll do that and get consistent about it, consistency, a habit, I promise you. September the 19th, I celebrated 35 years of recovery from an eating disorder. I couldn't get 35 minutes, let alone 35 years. But I took what I learned in treatment and I took it serious. And then when I went back to OA, then I could get into the spiritual part of the program. I could treat the mental and emotional part, and then I had to go back to treatment for 30 days to treat sexual trauma. 30 days, a separate program across the country, down in Florida. And then I've done 8-day codependency workshops. Not workshops, it's treatment, 8 days. I've done about 3 of them. I've done 5 days, 6 days. So it's not I just did one 30-day eating disorder treatment in LA and I've been good to go for 35 years. No, I continue to treat it. And how we encourage people to treat it is when that pain comes up, I don't care what the pain is, you go take care of it. You go get you a good therapist, you come back here and do an intensive, because the pain is what motivates you getting back in your addiction. When the pain comes up, an addict will find something to ease it. So I'm going to stop my preaching and pass the offering plate. I'm going to open it up for you guys. You know, there's people that do relapse, and I've heard of some people, particularly in the AA program, that relapse around holidays, and people with eating disorders relapse around holidays. And guess what? If you have had a relapse recently, all that validates is that you have a disease. That is one of the reasons that American Medical Association declares certain activity or behavior a disease, is if it has a relapse component. And an eating disorder has a very high rate of a relapse component. And it's not, you don't have to relapse. And if you do, it's about getting right back on the track. It's not about, and seeing what happened. It's never about the food, it's what's going on in your life. And this is where good sponsorship comes in, good therapy, treatment, whatever you need. All right, so let's open it up. Like I said, I'm looking at a screen full of recovering people, and I'll see some new people. Ask any question that you might want, or share with us, how do you do your recovery day in and day out? Is it successful? Do you have bad days? What do you do with the bad days? Share with us. Who would like to start?